Let's talk some chess. This game was played in 1939 in Argentina. Jose Raul Capablanca is playing with the white pieces, and an unknown player is playing with the black pieces. Capablanca opens with d4. Black responds d5. Capablanca fortifies his pawn with e3. Black keeps the symmetry going with e6, and Capablanca develops his bishop to d3. Black plays c6. Capablanca puts his knight on f3, and black puts his own bishop out on d6 in this nice little nest that the bishop can sort of come in and out of. Capablanca develops his other knight to d2, connecting the two knights very nicely. And here, black says, okay, I'm going to expand a bit on the king's side. I'm going to hem in your light squared bishop by playing f5. Capablanca says, if you can push a pawn, so can I. I will put my pawn on c4. And black says, I'm going to develop my queen and put it on f6, maybe hopefully control this diagonal once all these pawns have been captured and moved. Capablanca says, okay, you didn't take my pawn on c4, I'm going to support it with b3, and black develops his knight to h6. Kind of a weird square for the knight to go to, but it can't come to f6, quite obviously, because the queen is there, and probably not a good idea to put it on e7, because then it's hemming in both the queen and the bishop. So the h6 square is for the knight. Now Capablanca fianchettos his dark squared bishop to b2, and this is going to prove to be a very, very powerful bishop. You can already see it's sort of eyeing this long diagonal. It doesn't quite have a grip on it yet, but if these pawns ever move, then this bishop will become a very powerful force, as we are going to see. Black castles kingside, probably not the best idea because you have these two bishops really eyeing these diagonals. You don't want the king to be in the way of them, but black decides to castle that way, and Capablanca says, okay, I'm going to put my queen on c2 and create a battery with my light squared bishop, and also maybe the queen can sneak to c3 and create another sort of battery, so getting ready for some long-range attacks here. Black develops another piece, puts the knight on d7, and Capablanca says, okay, you castled kingside, I will consider pushing my pawns there. I'm also going to take away the g4 square for the black knight, so the black knight is sort of stuck here on this h6 square. Black responds by sort of shoring up his f5 pawn by playing g6, and now Capablanca castles queenside. So now we have two kings castled on opposite sides of the board. Always leads to an exciting game, both sides going after the other king and sort of creating an attack and creating different chances. So it'll be an exciting one from here on out. Here, black makes the first major mistake of the game. He plays e5, and the problem with this is that these two bishops that white has are really just itching to get open diagonals here, and they don't so far. There's a lot of tension in the center, there's a lot of pawns kind of blocking the way, but by playing e5, you allow for white to take on e5, and now this path will be very much open to the dark squared bishop. So black takes back on e5, which I think was the idea behind playing e5. Now you get your knight on this very nice square, but the problem here is that you've just opened this diagonal, and Capablanca is going to do his best to open another really powerful diagonal. So here, Capablanca takes on d5 with the pawn. Black responds by taking back on d5. And now Capablanca plays a very crazy, surprising move. It is the best move according to the engine. So see if you can take a second and find the move that he plays here. Okay, congrats if you found it. The correct move is knight to c4. And this is a wild move. You're not really threatening much, it seems. You know, you're attacking black's knight and black's bishop, but both of them are defended. The knight is on a better square, I suppose, but it doesn't seem to be achieving much. And with all of that said, you're offering up a knight for the taking. And black says, thank you very much, I will take a free piece, and takes on c4. But this allows Capablanca to play this really nice bishop captures on c4 with check. And now both of these bishops are totally active. They have an amazing grip on these very powerful diagonals. They're going to make life difficult for black's king. So here's a long-range check from the bishop, and it's sort of tough to find a good move here for black. The best move, as it turns out, is just to take with the knight on c4. This obviously opens up an attack from the bishop, and white would take the black queen here. White will be much better in this position, but this is the best that black could have done. Another move that looks reasonable, at least at first sight, is king to h8, but this is actually not reasonable because it allows a really nice exchange sacrifice with rook to d6. Obviously comes with an attack on the queen. And you have to be careful here because if queen takes, then bishop takes on e5, forks the king and the queen. So that doesn't work as much. Black played a move that was sort of in between those two moves. Black put his knight on f7. So this knight that was hanging out here on h6, at least it sort of becomes useful and blocks the check of the bishop. But this knight, as we will see, is just going to be pinned forever. It's not going to be of any help. It seems like it should be defending this knight on e5, but of course it's not because it is pinned. And here Capablanca plays the idea that we just alluded to. And actually take a second, because it may be tricky here to think of how to continue this attack for white. So take a second to see what move you make to sort of keep the pressure on. Okay, so hopefully you went with a rook lift. This is the first of two really fun rook lifts in this game. Capablanca plays rook captures bishop on d6. A really nice exchange sacrifice here. You obviously take a bishop, and now you are threatening the queen, and kind of forces black to take back with the queen. The problem here, we talked about before, before we kind of had bishop takes, but the queen was on h8, or the king was on h8, so this would fork the king and the queen. You don't have that in this position, but you do have knight takes on e5. And now it's looking really, really dangerous for white. So that rook lift was really nice. And I should also mention that if you remember if we go all the way back to the knight sacrifice on c4, this also opened up the d file from the rook because the knight left from d2. So this kind of sacrifice, in addition to opening up the diagonal, opened up the d file for the rook to make this really nice rook lift. So rook takes bishop, queen really has no choice but to take back, and then Capablanca takes the knight on e5. And you can't really take back with the queen because the bishop defends the knight, and you can't take back with the knight because the knight is pinned to the king. So this is a very sad position for black. Black tries his best and puts his bishop on e6, kind of blocking the bishop from the knight. Now black is threatening to take the knight with his knight, so take the white knight on e5 with the black knight on f7 because it's no longer pinned. But Capablanca says, no, I am not going to allow that. I like my two bishops controlling these diagonals, so I'm going to try to get my last piece into the game with rook to d1. And very similar idea, you want to control this d file. It's a really important file. The queen is currently hanging out there now, and this forces black to retreat the queen to e7. You still need to stay in defense of this bishop. Otherwise, if the queen maybe moved to c7, then obviously white would just take the bishop. So you still have to stay in defense of this bishop. The only way to do that while getting off of the d file is by playing e7. But now Capablanca has another beautiful rook lift, forcing exchange sacrifice, brings the rook to d7, and really cool how we have these two just back-to-back rook lifts, giving them up for bishops and just keeping the attack on. Obviously, you're attacking the queen here, and you really have no choice. If you pretty much have to take the rook. So if you can't take with the queen because the knight takes back, so black takes with the bishop, but then this allows Capablanca to get this pesky bishop out of the way with knight takes on d7. And now there's nothing to stop these two bishops slicing this way and just totally delivering a brutal long-range attack into black's headquarters. So here black played actually a good move, which is rook to c8. His position is much stronger for white, but this is the best move under the circumstances. You can't take the knight here. This actually leads to a forced checkmate in 9 for similar themes that we're about to see. So instead, black puts his rook on the open c file, but Capablanca essentially ends the game by playing queen to c3. And now, you're facing two separate checkmates. The queen can either deliver checkmate on g7 or h8. Really hard to defend against them both. It seems like h8 is defended by the knight, but again, don't forget, it's not, because the bishop is pinning the knight. You can't put the queen on f8 because then you get just queen to h8 checkmate. So, you can't block with a queen. Obviously, the queen would just take. So really hard to defend both checkmates. The only way to keep this game going is to do what black did, which is playing rook takes bishop on c4. Now you've pinned the queen to the king, so that the queen can't run away and play checkmate. But you can just take the rook with the pawn on c4. And now black makes another reasonable move, which is knight to e5, blocking the path of this queen. You couldn't block before because the knight obviously was pinned, so it couldn't move. But now the knight comes to e5 to block the queen. to stop these 2 checkmates. But Capablanca says, okay, I will just take that with my knight on e5. And now, when all is said and done, even though Capablanca had 2 of these exchange sacrifice rook lifts, now you have a bishop and a knight for a rook. You are also up a pawn. Your king is much safer, and you have this battery that's ready to deliver checkmate. If this knight moves and has some, the knight can have a great discovered attack. Imagine if the knight came to g6, attacking the queen. This would just be a disaster. So Black played rook to d8, and here Capablanca just played c5, and Black resigned the game, because this is just very, very difficult and brutal to play if you are playing with the black pieces. You just have to live with this constant threat. White has more pieces, a really nice centralized knight. That's going to be tough to kick out if it doesn't decide to move. So this game is over. So a really fun game. I thought it was really cool how Capablanca had these just 2 really powerful bishops, and had 2 basically identical rook lift exchange sacrifices for both of Black's bishops, and just kept the pressure on, kept the attack going. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Drop a like and a subscribe, and we will see you next time.